right. I always feel like I'm not sure how to start these things. Like, should we have a theme song for the video, something like that? You know, it's time for math. You know you love it. Let's take some notes now. But I'm not much of a singer, so I'm probably not going to do that. All right, Module 2 notes. Our next lesson for today is going to be Module 2, Lesson 17. Your favorite and mine, estimating. Estimating. Okay. Again, having the same technical difficulties we were having before. Not sure why this thing won't focus properly, but we'll do the best we can. We're estimating quotients today. Still dealing with division, but we're going to do some estimating. Now, 10 plus 5 plus 1 more is 16, 1 more is 17. Roman numerals start to get really crazy in the teens. Okay, a lot of this is going to be familiar, including the vocabulary that we start with. But there is going to be a new type of estimating we're going to talk about. I think I've mentioned it in class. We're going to talk about compatible numbers in a few minutes. Compatible number rounding. Compatible number rounding is going to break some of our rules. So, again, I know you guys are going to love that. All right, number 1, rounding. We've talked about rounding a number of times. I know I'm really, really picky about it, but again, I want to make sure that you're using the right terms. Rounding means changing one or more numbers. So you're changing one or more numbers to make operations easier. And when I'm talking about operations, I'm just talking about add, subtract, multiply, divide, that sort of thing. Okay. Rounding is just changing the numbers. The purpose is so that the operations are easier, but we're not actually doing that yet. The operations, the adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing, happens during this step. Estimating. This is where I get to grind my pencil into the paper again. After. And I know it's silly. I always make such a big deal about this, but so many students, because they're comfortable with the algorithms, they're comfortable with the adding and subtracting, so many students want to just do all the work and then round the answer. That's not the point. Rounding is making the numbers easier so that you can estimate after that and just get something super close to the answer before you even work the answer out. Estimating. After rounding, once you're done rounding, after rounding, perform the operation. And I'll go ahead and put one of my little parenthesis S's just in case there's more than one. Perform the operation or operations. But for what we're doing, it'll usually just be one. And finally, number 3. This is a vocab word from our last lesson, but we're going to be using it a lot. Quotient. Quotient is the answer to a division problem. Okay. The sum is for adding, difference is for subtracting, product is for multiplication, quotient is for dividing. All right, letter B. We get to talk procedure today. I feel like we did that a little in the last lesson, but it's been a while since it's been B. I don't know why that bothers me. Procedure. Step 1. Now in the past, you could just round whatever numbers you had, but I'm going to be very picky today. I'm going to throw a little more vocab at you that hopefully you remember from the last lesson. Round the divisor. Round the divisor to the greatest place value. I'll move my paper so you can see the whole thing in just a moment. Okay. Round the divisor to the greatest place value. We are starting with the number of groups you're splitting something up into. So, if I have 813, this is what I'm starting with. This is what I am breaking up into pieces, so this is my dividend. I divide it by the divisor. I want to find out how many times the divisor will go into the dividend. How many groups can I make of 29? Or, looking at it a different way, maybe I'm making 29 groups. How much would be in each group? Dividend, the whole collected assembly, whatever, 813 comic books. 29 is the number of stacks that I want to make, 29 stacks of comics. Or if I say I'm going to sell my comics 29 to a bag. That's ridiculous, but whatever. 813 divided by 29, dividend and divisor. So our divisor is going to be approximately equal. We're going to round it to the greatest place value. The greatest place value, it goes out to the tens, so we're going to round to the nearest 10. 29 is between 20 and 30, but it's much closer to 30. Plus, the 2 looks next door. The 9 says, hey, you got a sore. That part looks pretty familiar, hopefully. Step 2 is where we're going to throw some of those rules to the side. Step 2. When it's time to round the dividend, round the dividend using compatible numbers. Now, compatible numbers, what on earth are those? Well, compatible, first of all, is just a word that means things that go together well. Okay? Things that go together well are compatible. All right? Things that go together well are compatible. You are compatible with your friends. You share common interests. Probably some things are similar about you. Certain colors are very compatible. Blue and orange go together very well. Compatible means things go together. Now the numbers, we want numbers that are going to be compatible with each other. We want numbers that are going to be quick and easy to divide. 813 divided by 29 is not easy to divide. I rounded 29 to 30. Okay. Now I'm going to take a look at the 30. I'm going to look at the 30 and I'm going to say, okay, I want to box the non-zero digit. Basically, I want to start thinking like we did in lesson 2-16. I want to think, how can I do this mentally? Because estimation, most of the work for estimation should be done mentally. Now, I am going to look at the first number. Sometimes I look at the second number also. But 8 is bigger than 3, so I don't need to pull in something else. If this had been 213, I might have stretched over to the 1. If this had been 113, I definitely would have stretched over to the 1. What I want to do is look at that first 1, maybe 2 digits, but usually 1 will be enough. Look at that first 1 or 2 digits and ask, how can we change? How can we change these digits into something easily divided by 3. I've got the 3 in the box. I want to ask myself, how can I change the 8? Again, sometimes you'll take the next digit, but we're not doing that right this second. How can I change that into something that will very easily be divided by 3? Normal rounding rules would tell me, okay, I'm rounding to this place. Look next door. There's a 1. 4 or less, the 8 should rest. But 8 divided by 3 does not work out evenly. 8 divided by 3 is not something we can do mentally. So instead, as crazy as this is, I'm going to look at 813. I'm going to look at that first digit, and I'm going to ask, what is 8 close to? That would be a multiple of 3. That would be easily divided by 3. I'm going to think about my 3 counting. 3. 6. Oh, 6 is close. 9 is even closer. 6 would have been 2 away. That's not awful. I could work with that. But 9 will be even closer. So, even though this is technically closer to 800, I acknowledge this really normally would round down to 800. I am going to round it up to 900 because that 9 is very easy to divide by 3. That 9 is a multiple of 3. Let me show you in step 3. Okay. Slide this up a little bit. Okay. For step 3, use patterns and fact families to divide. This is, once again, exactly what we did in lesson 2-16. Okay. So my original dividend was 813. My original divisor was 29. This is approximately equal to, I changed this one to 900 after I had already changed this to 30. Now I can use the rules from lesson 2-16, box up the non-zero digits, cross out pairs of zeros, ones place, gone, come up with an estimate. 9 divided by 3 is 3. 1 0 left gets carried over. Now if I do the actual division, and I'll put it in the calculator, 813 divided by 29, the actual answer, very hard to see on the video probably, 28 and 0344827 blah 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 blah. So 28 something. Is that pretty close to 30? Yeah, that's pretty close. Because I'm changing the 813 into 900, it's such a drastic change, there's always the possibility that your estimate will be a little bit further away. That's okay. It's kind of a compromise we make with division. Division, like subtraction, is very particular. Lights went out. That's a new one. There we go, folks. Division's very picky, so we need to kind of bend the rules to make the estimation work easily. Now, I will do a couple of examples with you. I know this video is starting to run long, but I think we've got a couple minutes. We'll obviously be doing more in class as well. But let's go ahead and do at least 2 more. Let's start with 232 divided by 59. Okay. Now, I would suggest, depending on how comfortable you feel, go ahead and pause the video. See if you can work this out on your own using the steps above. If you don't want to do that with this one, at least do it with the next one. Okay. Pause. And we're back. Here's our divisor. We're going to start with the divisor and round that first. 59 is pretty close to 60. We rounded it up to the nearest 10. That I think most of us are pretty confident with. Now the problem is this for 232. First of all, 2 is smaller than 6. So I would have to round that way up, probably 2/6, to make it work. And that's, yeah, it's going to be a little much. So let's just take a second digit. Let's take a second digit. Let's look at 23. Now 23 divided by 6 will not work evenly. It's not easy. So I want to think, what multiples of 6 are close to this? 6 times 1 is 6. 6 times 2 is 12. Times 3 is 18. Then we go up to 24. 24. 24 is pretty close. So I will round the 23 to 24. The 2 just becomes a 0, just like normal. Now, again, I understand this is not really the way we would normally round. This should go down to 230, shouldn't it, normally? The problem is 230 is not easy to divide by 60. 200 is not easy to divide by 60. We use compatible numbers. We're going to pick something that's close. All right. From here, we proceed as normal. 24 divided by 6 equals 4. The zeros are both in the ones place. They both cancel. There's nothing else. So that's it. My answer is 4. If I put this in the calculator, 232 divided by 59, the answer is 3.9 blah, 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 blah. Okay. So 4 is correct on this one. Now, as I suggested a moment ago, please, please consider pausing the video after I've written this and working it out on your own. You can then compare to mine, see how you did. That way, if you're having any trouble, any questions, you can ask about them in class. So 5,520 divided by 85, pause. Okay. Let's go ahead and start by rounding the divisor. 8, 5. Goes out to the tens place, so the tens place looks next door and asks its neighbor for advice, and the 5 says, hey, 5 or more, you got to soar. So the 8 will soar up to 9. 85 will become 90. Looking at just the 9 for right now, I go back to the 5. Now, if I wanted to round the 5 up to 6, 7, 8, I'd have to round it all the way up to 9 to make it work. That's too much. So I'm going to drag out to a second digit, 55. Now, those of you who are comfortable with your 9's times tables, hopefully 55 sounds like something you're familiar with. But just like before, we can go through the multiples of 9 and see. 9 times 1 is 9. 9 times 2 is 18. 9 times 3 is 27. 9 times 4 is 36. 9 times 5 is 45. Oh, it's getting closer. 9 times 6 is 54. Only 1 away. That's a win. Now, sometimes it will be 2 away or something like that. If this had been 5,320, I probably still would go with 5,400 as my rounded number. Even if this had been down to just, if this had been just plain 5,000, I probably still would have gone to 54, to 5,400. Okay. Because these two digits taken together, 54, can very easily be divided by 9. 54 divided by 9, we already talked, it's 6. Using multiples can give us our answer too. Cancel out the zeros and the ones. Try to cancel out the next one, but there is no pair. So go fish. 60 when we move it over. Okay. And just one more time, 5520 divided by 85. If I put that in the calculator, my answer ends up being about 64.9. So my estimate's a little low, but it's 60 compared to 64, 65. That's not bad. All right, since this took longer, talking about compatible numbers, me singing a ridiculous theme song, we'll go ahead and cut here. As always, questions, comments in class. All right. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I will see you next time.